Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, so if you feel you do need help, please reach out and get the help you need. We have a whole list of things on our files page over on Facebook at facebook.com/crazylifepodcast, and or just search on the internet for the suicide prevention hotline number, or go to NAMI.org or whatever resource you can find. But just please reach out for help if you need it. If you feel as though you're going to harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. And try not to be alone. Also, if you feel that way and you realize that you're writing a note or making plans of how you would do, like harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. That's a huge red flag. And lastly, please do not replace the idea of therapy with listening to this show. Again, if you need help, please reach out and get the help that you need, or contact us. We can try to help you find the help that you need.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen. I'm your hostess for the evening. And with me, as always, is Brian. Hey, Brian.
Howdy.
We are missing Heno this week, unfortunately, and I'm hopeful that he will be back next week. But for now, it's Brian and I, which is going to be an awesome show for you guys. With that, I know the rules, so I will be starting us off this week. Hey, Jen, how was your week? Why, thank you, Jen. My week was great. My week is actually, it's been my last 2 weeks, honestly. It's been kind of crazy, of course, you know the usual, folks. My work is life right now, but I've actually been doing some renovation on the house. Just simple stuff. We are putting in a floating floor in my back 2 rooms. I'm doing some painting and some refreshing, and I'm actually having an issue with picking out curtains. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is I'm getting a bit of paralysis by analysis. And the funny part about it is a friend of mine on Twitter that I talk with, he mentioned that to me. He pointed it out to me. He's like, that's really difficult because you'll get paralysis by analysis. And I'm like, dude, how did you know?
Right.
It's like that's not something that's thrown around in casual conversation. But
it should be like everybody runs into it. No matter whether it's a restaurant or something for home improvement or whatever, your own clothes, just whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean, everybody runs into it, but the actual, naming it, I was like, dude, that's unusual. But that was really cool because we had a great conversation about it. But I love online shopping.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge online shopper. But the problem with online shopping is, A, there's a lot of options.
Yep.
B, there's a lot of price points. So you're trying to find that right balance between the right option at the right price point.
Yeah.
And that's where I get stuck. It's like, okay, do I buy it at this price with this option, or do I save a little money with this option, or do I spend a little bit more and get this option?
Right.
Which option do I really love? It gets really convoluted quickly. And then you start adding into, okay, this one offers free shipping, but this one has 20% off. It gets just so overwhelming.
Mm.
And then trying to decide what look I'm going for. And I'm not good with putting all the little pieces together to form a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at saying, I like that, I don't like that. But I'm not good at the whole big picture thing.
Right.
So it's tough. It's really, I know, folks, I'm talking about, first world problems.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
This is not, life or death situations by any stretch of the imagination, and I understand that. But, it is what I'm going through right now, and trying to kind of figure it all out. And I honestly give myself anxiety and stress attacks over this, over something so simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's stupid curtains. For all intents and purposes, it makes no difference to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really, if you got them in and didn't like them, you could easily exchange them or whatever. Yeah. But I understand. It's, it's simple to do, or easy enough to do.
And it's pulling that trigger. So I think tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to be going actually to stores. I think I need to actually physically go to stores and take a look at things in the store to kind of help me get over this.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, the stuff that I've seen online and stuff, I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on curtains.
Yeah.
I'm just not. That's just not for me.
Right.
No problem, but just it's not for me. That's not the price point that I'm looking to stay in.
Right.
I preferably like to stay around $100, not hundreds of dollars.
Right.
But again, like I said,
because the higher amount that you're willing to go, it's just more and more. It's like those wedding dress shows on TLC, like you see the girl or the women go in there and they're like, I have like $3,000. And they're like, well, here's 2 dresses, pick one. And if they go in there like, there's no limit. And they're like, oh, the whole store is yours then,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been working through that and trying to figure all that stuff out. We had Halloween that happened because last week was Halloween, wasn't it? Or the week before? I'm losing track of
the week
days,
before. Yeah. The week before that.
Gotcha. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but we got a new car.
No, I don't think so. Or if so, I don't remember. So either way, it's new to me.
Either way. We got a new car.
Yeah.
Which, again, was a lot of fun, but a lot of stress, as people are well aware of. Going into a dealership is very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
We have a really great car guy that we work with that's not off of commission.
Mm-hmm.
It is off of commission, but it's off of the number of cars sold. It's not off of the value of the car.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to, bickering back and forth about price and stuff, it doesn't become really an option because he doesn't have a lot of skin in the game.
Yeah.
His skin in the game is selling the car.
Right.
So we went and we got to see him, and which was fun, and we ended up getting a Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk, which, if you remember my orange vehicle, which I don't know if that's for Brian, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my orange vehicle, except a 2019 version of it.
Yeah. That's what when you said that, I was like, isn't that what you had? Yeah.
Yes.
I know that was a lease, but still, okay.
Yes.
Mm.
Which is kind of a fun story because the Trailhawk, the first year the Trailhawk came out, which is what I had originally in the orange color, Mango Tango actually, to be correct.
Right.
It has 9 gears. Well, you couldn't get it into 9th gear because they locked out 9th gear on the first year that they created them.
Mm.
Really sure why, but that's what it was. So it was a big thing in my household that there was no 9th gear on the Trailhawk.
Mm.
So come this year, we're talking to the salesman, and he mentions the Trailhawk. So I'm like, it's got to have the 9th gear, or we can't take it.
Right.
So we went on the expressway and tried all the gears, and sure enough, we got to 9th gear. Woohoo, 9th gear! Which I'm not a car person, so it doesn't mean anything
Right.
that much to me. But to my husband, it made a
Right.
big deal.
Makes
So-
it sound like you guys went plaid or something like that, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. We went plaid.
Mm-hmm.
But, so it's white with a black streak down the hood, front of the hood. So,
Okay.
the center of it, I should say.
Oh, it's white, huh?
So,
Oh, boy.
yeah. All fancy and stuff.
Yep, it's going to be so bright in the summer.
Yeah.
Light's going to reflect
Well,
off that hood.
The good part about the black is that it absorbs a lot of the light.
Yeah.
So the white stuff will be reflecting, but the black should absorb it. So hopefully they'll kind of counteract each other
Yeah.
and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I've been doing, a lot of stressing. It sounds like, but yeah, a lot of stressing, a lot of anxiety and stuff, but over trivial things, which I think is a big reminder to myself as well as to other people that don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
And I keep having to remind myself of that. It's like over and over. It's like, come on now. This is stupid. This is silly. This is little stuff. This is not life or death decisions.
Right.
This is not going to make or break you. Just make a decision. It'll be okay.
Right. But as we both know, for somebody with anxiety, that's the hard part is
Yeah.
just pulling that trigger finally, or that first step or whatever, it's all kind of in the same boat there. It's, if you could just pull the trigger, you wouldn't have as much anxiety because you wouldn't essentially be afraid of making the wrong decision,
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm.
And my big thing keeps going through my head. I'm like, oh, what if it doesn't look right? It's curtains.
Then
If they cover the windows, it's okay.
Right.
It does it right.
Or like I said, unless they're like custom, you could take
Right.
them back, and say, hey, this didn't work, and get something else. Yeah.
And then, of course, it comes through your head. What will people think? It doesn't matter what people think.
Yeah.
But, it so does.
Yeah.
We can tell ourselves that all day long, that it doesn't matter what other people think. Oh, it does.
Yeah.
And, I'll own it. It matters to me what people think of me
Mhm.
and my house and my decisions.
Yeah.
It does. And I try not to give it as much weight
Yeah.
as other things, including my opinion. I'm trying to give my opinion way more weight than anyone else's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But their opinions still have weight with me. It's just who I am. That's how
Yeah.
I'm made, and that's how I feel and think.
Right.
So I do have to accept that, and as we talked about before, coming up on the holidays and doing all the family stuff and things like that, and judgments are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is distorted thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's me assuming that people are judging me
Mhm.
when they're not judging me.
Right.
But it's still factors that play into the roles of my life.
Yeah.
The decisions that I make. It just is.
Like my therapist told me, because I'd made a comment about that, about how, I know certain things are that kind of, like me assuming other people are thinking whatever, I was like, and I know it shouldn't matter and it's stupid, or whatever. And she's like, but they do, you know, they're in your head. So no matter how minimal you feel they are and everything, even though you're trying to, you know, change your thinking or whatever, it's like you said, it's still, clearly it still matters to you. So you can't completely brush it aside. You know, you do have to be aware that it does matter in some way. I mean, you don't have to give it like you said, you don't have to give it much weight in the overall decision, but because, you know, they're not going to have to stare at it every day. So, you know, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, those sound like, I mean, those are good decisions to have to stress over. You know, it's not like, should we put the dog down or not, or, you know, something like that. You know, things where people are agonizing, you know.
Which actually, I'm glad that you brought that up, which is horrible, but I'm glad that you brought that up.
Oh boy.
Because my dog, actually, another fun little snippet out of my life, there's a heartworm medicine out there now that it's a 6-month shot versus the monthly chewables.
Mm-hmm.
So we gave it to my one dog. No problems. Everything's great. So they're due for their heartworm again. So we gave it to both dogs. Otis, my male pit that I have, had a severe allergic reaction.
Oh my.
His face blew up.
Oh.
So, yeah, his face was completely swollen and huge.
Poor dog.
He was having trouble. He kept rubbing his face. He had big old hives all over his entire body. His hair was standing up because of the hives and stuff.
Right.
So we rushed him back to the vets, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The vet had him. They gave him a steroid and Benadryl to stop the allergic reaction that was going on, which made him nauseous. So then he started throwing up.
Oh, jeez. Poor dog. Yeah.
Poor puppy.
I will say this, as someone who's had hives really badly, I'd rather feel nauseous than have hives. They're both terrible, though. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was so bad that when my husband got him to the veterinarian's office, he couldn't walk.
Oh, wow.
So my husband picked him up and carried him into the office, and they put a blanket on the floor of the exam room. Mm-hmm. And this gives you a little bit of insight on my husband. He laid down next to Otis. Mm-hmm. So he's laying on the floor of the examining room with Otis because Otis was feeling so bad, and he wanted to make sure Otis felt better.
Right.
So he had the comfort of somebody with him.
Right, sure.
So, you know, so that gives you a little insight into my husband.
Right.
So they came in and saw him down there with Otis, and, you know, they came in, they gave him his shots and Otis the shots and stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, he became nauseous, started getting sick, so they gave him some Pepcid and some anti-nausea medicine.
Right.
Still was getting sick. So pretty much every half hour. So they couldn't keep him overnight because they're not staffed for it. So I got to go pick up Otis and take him to the emergency vet, who's open 24 hours.
Yeah. Which,
anyone who's been to the emergency vet, yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
It's horribly expensive.
Yeah, we lucked out because that's where we had to take Missy when she was having her, I don't know, whatever you call them, seizures or whatever.
Yeah.
Before we had her put down, and, you know, and afterwards they were like, you know, normally we charge this, but since blah, 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 they cut us a huge break. So.
Nice.
Because literally all we did was take her in there and make that decision. You know, they didn't treat her really with much. All they did was gave her something to calm her down so that it would kind of slow down the seizures. And that's kind of part of the other procedure anyway, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So thankfully he's doing well now. He's back to normal. But the medicine took hold overnight, and he stopped getting sick, and he was actually able to eat a little something before we were able to pick him up. So now we get to submit all of the paperwork and everything. My vet is really great. She's expensive, but she's really great. She already opened a claim with the heartworm company. Mm-hmm. And to have them cover all the costs.
Oh, okay.
because it's an allergic reaction to their drug. And it was very apparent that it was their drug that caused the allergic reaction.
Right.
So they opened a claim with the company, and they're going to get us the claim number and everything so we can submit the emergency vet bills to them as well.
Oh, cool.
So that they can, I mean, hey, thankfully, I'm very, very thankful and, you know, a lot of gratitude for my life that I have right now, and the fact that my husband and I have very good jobs and we're able to be able to put out the money to make that Otis was taken well care of. Because all in all, it probably was upwards of $1,000.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after having to go to the
emergency.
Yeah, because they're so expensive.
So thankfully we're in a position that we're able to do that for him. And I can't even imagine if we weren't. You know, he's a huge part of our family.
Absolutely.
You know, he's one. I don't have children, and my dogs are my children.
Right.
So I can't even imagine not being able to do everything I am able to do for him. But thankfully, everything worked out well, and you know, he's back to his puppy self. And there's actually a picture on Facebook of him smiling as he's getting daddy scratches.
Well, good. I'm glad he's you know, doing better then. That's great. Cause I've seen some pictures of dogs when they've gone through stuff like that. And it's so much worse than us, because at least with us, you can, you know, hey, this is going on, you know, we're going to this and this, you know, with the dog, they're just like, why is my face blown up? You know, like,
well, he kept rubbing his face on the grass cause they were outside, and my husband was working in the pole barn, and he was leaving the pole barn, and he looked over and he just kept seeing Otis rubbing his face, and he's like, what's going on, bud? And Otis turned and looked at him, and his face was all swollen. He's like, holy crap.
Yeah. Well, no wonder he was rubbing his face so much, you know? It's probably itching like crazy, or he thought there was something on his head, one or the other.
Right. I mean, I've never seen his head so big.
Poor dog, yeah.
Like, dang, dog.
Yep.
So that's been my crazy 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Boy, my weeks are nowhere near that crazy. Or week, I should say.
Right.
I gave myself my second testosterone shot this past Thursday, and it went way better than the first one. Not that the first one went terrible, but you know, like I told you guys, I was anxious, as well as I didn't know what I was doing necessarily. This time, boom, put the, you know, needle right into the thing, pull the stuff out, blah, blah, do all the, you know, wipe with the alcohol pad. And, I changed a little bit where on my leg I gave myself the shot, and I've got a little tenderness around like the injection area, but it's not hurting like the last time. I don't know if you remember me saying like my lower, like right above my knee was hurting.
Yeah.
Like just even to the touch, it just hurt. And when I was reading online, what I realized was the thing I read tells you to divide your thigh in thirds. And then on the outer third is where you give yourself the shot. Well, I'm counting from me to my knee, 1, 2, 3. And then I realized when I was reading this, I was like, I bet they're counting, because when you're looking at your thigh, the top is your knee.
Yeah. If
you're working towards you. So I'm like, I bet the third is supposed to be more up, you know, more up by like your waist or
your thigh.
Yeah. So I gave myself, and I looked online at a couple pictures, and that's where it looks like people were doing it. So I was like, well, I'm going to try it up there because that seems to be right. So I did that, and like I said, I've got a little tenderness this time, but overall not too bad. So it was, I was like, okay, that's what it was then, is that where I gave myself the shot just wasn't the right location. So, but that's it. It was, you know, I had an easier time, pushing down the plunger on the syringe once it was in my leg. I think because I was afraid the first time, like I didn't know how hard to push, or, you know, cause I was afraid of, you know, you don't want to just push as hard as you can, you know, you want to gradually, cause otherwise the testosterone, when you pull the needle out, will come back out of your leg. You know, it'll start leaking back out, basically. So you don't want to, like, just boom and fire it in there. You want to, you know, slowly do it. But anyway, that went much better. So that made me feel a lot better. I think that'll really help, because the first time with me being as nervous and then still having the pain and not getting, you know, this time I was going in and I was still a little like, you know. But after everything went, you know, really well, I was like, okay, like now I got a better handle on this. I still don't like it.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
You still feel pretty good about the testosterone?
Yeah.
Working on well for you?
Yeah. I was like, I really wish there was a better option. I know there are other options out there. But first of all, I don't know if my insurance would cover them. And, you know, there's all that. Plus, I assume the doctor put me on the one that they feel was going to be the best option for me, but I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, that was a good time. I really didn't do much else this week. I've been trying to, like, I have stuff I want to put on eBay, and I've been trying to, get pictures and all this done, but it seems like every time I go to start, something else is coming up and stopping me.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not even making excuses this time. It's like literally stuff is coming up and I'm doing, you know, so I gotta, I don't know, figure out a way to make time for that. So, but I'm going to be calling this week. I'm going to be calling, bankruptcy attorneys to kind of, you know, ask a few questions and get pricing and all that kind of stuff. Cause I meant to do it last week, but I kept putting it off. So, cause, you know, phone call.
Right. They're not easy. It
Yeah.
seems so simple, but it's not as simple as it seems.
I tried reaching out to two of them via their website, but I know a lot of websites don't, like, just for some reason the people don't get the emails. I think they probably go somewhere they don't check, you know?
Yeah.
Like goes to some email they just don't look at enough or whatever. So I'm gonna just try calling them, you know, and hopefully figure something out there, I should say. But yeah, I can't really think of much else I've done this week. So
Nice.
yeah, it's been all my weeks have been pretty slow because I will say this, like I've still been fighting, like the easiest way I can put it so everyone will understand is the blahs, you know?
Yeah.
And it's depression. It's seasonal depression is what it is. But it's on top of, like, I normally have issues kind of, you know, springing out of bed. And now with the weather the way it's been and everything, it's really like kicking my butt. Like this is one of the hardest years I think I've had in a long time. So
it's been a really rough year for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people I talk to online talk about how difficult it is.
Yeah, and it's nothing, you know, there's nothing on top of that. You know, there's like nothing in my life that's so bad that it's just, I think I was kind of already in a depression kind of spiral, and then this happened, and I think it's kind of kept me in a little longer than normal, but
right.
Hopefully I'll figure a way out of it. I mean, I know I will. You just keep pressing, you know.
Exactly. Sooner or later, you can work your way out of it.
Yeah. So hopefully sooner than later, because I hate the, you know, waking up and just been like, you know, I think I'm just going to stay in bed today.
Exactly.
You know.
I hear you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, today we're going to be talking about how to rebuild a relationship with someone who's hurt you. There's an article on tinybuddha.com by Anais Rodriguez that really kind of struck a chord with me, and I thought it was really interesting because it's something that we all deal with. You know, how do you break through that barrier that becomes there when, you know, if someone hurts you, it sucks. It hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to trust again.
Yeah.
You know? Well, it starts with a quote, "Holding a grudge doesn't make you strong. It makes you bitter. forgiveness doesn't make you weak, it sets you free. Which I 100% agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't make it easy, but it is the right thing to do. And I always say, I can forgive, but I'll never forget.
Right.
So but if you forgive and you truly say that you forgive them, you have to let them go. You can't just say, I forgive you, and then still hold on to it.
Yeah.
It's not, you can't do that.
Yeah.
If you forgive, you got to let it go. You don't have to forget it, but you do have to let it go.
Mm.
But part of how to learn to let go and forgive, in the article, the first one they say is see the human being in the projection. A significant part of what we see in other people, particularly those with whom we've had an emotional history, can often be a projection of our own unconscious attitudes toward that person and not a reflection on how they're behaving. This is difficult to see in ourselves and tends to be even more pronounced in people we've known for a long time, particularly our parents. I learned to forgive my dad by seeing the person in him and not the idea of what I thought a father should be. Doing so wasn't an easy process, as I had to face shortcomings on both of us. On his side, it was constantly making promises he couldn't keep out of fear of losing love and affection from anyone around him. For me, it was the inability to give him a chance to make things right and see him in a new light, even when it was the most appropriate thing to do for both of us. Fortunately, over time, as I grew as a person, I was able to build a new relationship with him based upon fresh experiences and not our sour expectations. That's pretty darn good. How often do we have expectations of someone and they don't live up to the expectation and we blame them for it?
Yeah.
It's almost we set people up for failure sometimes, unintentionally. We don't want to do that, but sometimes you do. You just set someone up for failure, and when they don't meet your expectations, you get upset with them. And it's like, is it really all their fault? Maybe there's a little bit of onus on your end, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because, especially you've got to be careful that you're not, just because you would do ABC does not mean that they do things that way, so you have to make sure that even if you hold yourself to high standards, not everybody's going to hold themselves to the same standards you do. So, you kind of have to let there be some wiggle room with stuff like that,
I think a lot of it comes into play, like she mentioned in the article, parents, but also anyone we look up to or, we idolize. When you idolize someone, it's really tough for them to live up to that expectation of yours.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't even have to be, a fictitious figure or a celebrity or something like that. It could just be, you idolize your best friend or your partner, your, workmate. And, I remember back in high school, a good example of this is a friend of mine. I just thought she hung the moon and the stars. She was just the greatest thing since sliced bread. I thought she was awesome. And I caught her smoking. And it about broke my heart. And she looked at me and she's like, I don't understand why you're so, couldn't understand why I was so upset by it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, because you're not supposed to be smoking. You're not supposed to. She's like, but I never said I didn't smoke. That wasn't my, this is who I am.
Yep.
And I had to come to terms with that. And it's like, it's not her fault that she didn't live up to my belief of who she is.
Yeah.
That's not her fault. I can't get mad at her for that, even though it hurt. As we talked about before, feelings are real and they exist and they are. Doesn't mean we have to act on them.
Yeah.
That they are. They just are. So it was every right for me to be upset. I just couldn't act upon that fact that I was upset, which is a whole nother process.
Yeah.
Well, the next one is constantly reassess your expectations. Speaking of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
When trying to start afresh with my father, I found myself constantly face to face with my old expectations. Whenever he would act in a certain way, such as making empty promises or failing to be there for me when I needed him, it would trigger an old story, an old emotion, and would trigger an old story and old emotions I had about how he'd always been this way and how he'd never change. But each time I did so, I was able to reassess my expectations. A cynical way to look at this would be to say that I lowered them. But who's to say for whatever reason they weren't too high to begin with? When he began to act in a way that was more congruent with what I had come to expect, we were both happier. And he even began to positively surprise me sometimes when he fulfilled promises I didn't expect him to. You know, sometimes lowered expectations are what it calls for.
Yeah. I like, though, that it points out that, you know, it may not be that, even though you're lowering them, it may be that you had them too high to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
So,
you're more realistic about your expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like that way a little better than saying lowering, is being more realistic about it. Because, like you said, it's, you know, if you expect someone to always do everything this, you know, and at some point you're going to be disappointed. And especially like you were saying with the girl at school, you know, it's like, if they never said they're going to do those things, it's like, well, you've put that expectation there. They didn't, you know, so, you know, there's an element of, like you said, you know, you got to kind of look at your scenario, or, you know, because you can't control what they do. You can control how you, react, and you can control how, the situation affects you as far as that goes, you know, because if you don't expect them, and I'm not saying then all of a sudden you go the opposite way, you know, or anything to where it's like, oh, well, he never does this, or this, you know. Mm-hmm. But just understand he may not do it every time. That's a more realistic adjustment, you know.
And it's, you know, it's something to think about where your expectations come from. You know, did you set these expectations, or did they set the expectations?
Yeah. Yeah, because it'd be different if, like, every Friday someone gives you $20, right? Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden on a Friday, you're like, cool, I'm getting my $20 today. You go up to them and they're like, and they just look at you like, what? You know? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you know, it's like they've set that, you know, at that point. That's a little different because they've set that precedent, but, you know.
Mm-hmm. And it happens. I mean, a big place it happens is in social media. You'll be talking to someone, you know, every day, every week, you know, continuously having these conversations. Then all of a sudden they fall off the face of the planet. Yeah.
Like their account's gone, or they just quit talking to you, you know? It's just...
Yeah, they just quit talking to you with no explanation.
Yeah.
It's hard as heck.
Yeah. And it happens all the time.
Yes, it does. And it's really difficult because you have to, you know, in your mind, you have to come to terms with the fact that it just is, that's their right. They don't have to talk to you.
Right. Yeah.
But it hurts, and it does hurt, you know, and if they come back, then you have to kind of make up your mind on what you want to do next.
Yeah.
You know, do you hold on to that hurt, or do you, you know, give them a chance to explain? Do you know, where do you go with that? Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, it sounds like, you know, she's, you know, championing give them a chance to explain and give them a chance to, you know, so you can understand what happened and then make a decision based on how to go forward, which I would agree. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Mm-hmm. But I can't blame you for not wanting to do that.
Yeah. Also, you know, this may say it somewhere in the future part too, but I like, or no, it already did say, the reassessment part, like reassessing your expectations, is really that is something that'll help a whole lot too. Is if you're kind of, you don't set like your expectations in stone, you know, if they're kind of fluid to where as the person does what you think they're going to do less and less and less, you kind of like, you know, you adjust down, you know, just based on math, if nothing else, you know, like it's, you know, like a baseball player, every time they go up, they're not going to hit a home run, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know.
And it actually does talk about that in a little bit. So you're right on point.
Okay.
So, number 3, look at the world from their perspective. The spiritual teacher Ram Dass once said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. It's a tongue-in-cheek quote, and I've tried to apply the idea to my situation. I've always thought that I'm an empathetic and understanding person, but can I really stand in the shoes of my family members and be completely okay with their actions, particularly those who have hurt me? I tried to think about my dad's situation, his expectations and disappointments, the influences in his life, like constantly being on the move because of his work, and I understood that he wasn't there for me partly because he was afraid of losing his new family and being alone. At the end of the day, when I couldn't come to justify his actions, I was able to see the rationale in them and have empathy for him as a flawed human being, rather than someone who had intentionally done me wrong. That's huge, too. So often when we idolize or we hold someone up to very high expectations, we take away their humanity. You know, they're human. They make mistakes. They're flawed. We all are.
Yeah.
And you have to allow some room for them to be human.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? That's life. None of us can be as perfect as we would want to be or as, you know, people expect us to be. It's not always going to happen. So, yeah, definitely allow them the opportunity to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. The next one is practice acceptance in all areas of life. Sometimes I couldn't separate the man from the projection. I couldn't change my expectations, and I couldn't come to rationalize where I've been doing wrong. At this point, I had to try and accept things the way they are. And at first, I couldn't. I just felt so inauthentic that I was still so angry and upset. So I decided to start small and practice acceptance as a skill. I accepted little things like traffic on the way to work and rudeness by people in shops. I accepted when I saw something that I didn't like on the news or a friend of mine had been a little thoughtless. I even made it a habit to accept things I didn't like about myself. And finally, I began to be able to accept my father for his mistakes. You know, I'm pretty darn patient, and I think most people could agree to that. I do have a lot of patience, and I don't understand why some people get upset as they do about traffic and about little minutia in life, because it just doesn't hit my radar very often. Occasionally it does. I mean, I'm human, but for the most part, person's going slow. I guess I have to go slow too. You know, that's how I look at things. Now, I've worked on it, and I've worked very hard on that. Granted that patience comes by naturally. You know, I get it from my mother, and that's just who we are as people. So I'm just not a hothead. But it still takes effort and work on my part to be able to do that. So it's stuff to work on.
Yeah.
You know? Let's see. And the last one is number 5, view relationships as fluid, not solid. Ha! There you go.
Yep.
You talking about earlier. The final point was one of the most interesting. I began to view relationships in my life as fluid, not a solid. For me, fluid relationships mean that people could enter and leave, their roles could change as they could the way we related to each other. Unfortunately, this is a natural fact of life, and the choice we have is whether or not we resist it. My dad hasn't been a huge support nor a good role model, but right now he's a father and a friend, and someone I love. That may change in the future for better or worse, but I'm trying my best to be open to the journey. Learning to let go of people you love when they've hurt you is one of the most difficult challenges we will face in a lifetime. As you can see from my situation, letting go of someone may be releasing the grip you have on the idea of who they should be. Sometimes you can still maintain a relationship, just not the one you want. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. You know, I never close a door on anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. Because I always leave, or if I do close the door, I open the window, or I leave the door unlocked. Because you never know when someone's going to come back around into your life. And I've just never felt that I could be as rigid as shutting the door on someone and saying, no, never, done, period.
Right.
There's just nobody that I was ever able to do that with. Even people who've hurt me, even people who have really, made some bad decisions that have negatively affected me, I just can't say never. Because you don't know.
Right.
And the circumstances change, people change constantly. I change constantly.
Mm-hmm.
We're all fluid, and everything's fluid. So life is fluid. So how can we be strict and stern and, and just rigid about things? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. You're right, because really staying rigid and stuff obviously we all know, there's some scenarios where it's a different story, obviously if, someone's abusive or have done some unspeakable harm or damage to you, that's a whole different story. But, with some people, it's just, you just go, well, I'm moving this way and what you're doing is kind of toxic, or I feel like you're not moving that way. Like you said, you got to part ways at the time, but you just never know, like you said, when your roads could cross again down the road or whatever, or, something weird, like you end up working with them later, or, like me, one of the guys was a part of a group of bullies in high school to me, I ended up working with him at the one video store I worked at, and him and I actually, kind of buried the hatchet and, became actually, good friends at the time. So it was, I never, as soon as I saw him when he came in to work, and I was like, I don't know about this, but, he had changed. He wasn't the same guy he was. And, also, it did help. He flat out apologized for how he had behaved. So, that obviously helped too, but
goes a long way. Sure.
Yeah. But like I said, you just, like you said too, you just don't know where someone could cross your path again, and they may be a totally different person. Heno's not here tonight, but I'm sure he could attest to that with, somebody who knew him maybe when he was at his, down points with booze versus meeting, running into him now. I'm sure he's, night and day kind of a situation. So yeah, you just never know.
Exactly. So just some food for thought for you folks, something to think about. And, if you've got those grudges and you've got the negative feelings and the hurt, just take a look at them and really start analyzing them. Was it worth holding on to?
Yeah.
Is it helping you holding on to it? Most likely, probably not.
Yeah, most of the time these things end up being in those things where we've referred to the let go or be dragged kind of thing, or giving power to someone else, or however you want to word it. It ends up being a real control kind of situation. And just like the forgiveness part of this, it's like sometimes the forgiving people isn't about them as much as it is you stating, I'm done with this. I'm putting this to bed. Yeah. So, and sometimes that's all you need is, you just need to have the thought in your head that you've put an end to it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And just give yourself that freedom.
Yeah.
If you don't give it to them, give it to yourself.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If nothing else, let it go for your own sake. Mm. Especially if it's something that's been, a long time ago or whatever. Again, always, of course, there's scenarios where, these things don't work. Yeah. Or don't apply. But yeah, there's just been so much. I've gone through this recently where, some stuff's happened and I'm just like, I'm just not even mad anymore. I'm not even going to hold it. It's like, I'm just going to let it, just roll off my back basically. Cause it's just, it's not a hill worth dying on, as we've gone over and stuff, it's not worth me sitting up or staying up late at night worrying about this or that. It's just, and I know myself enough to know that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And again, odds are, I'd end up losing sleep, being all torn up, all this blah, blah, blah. And the other person probably doesn't even really know what's going, like that they've caused any of this to you. So it's like, just, if you can let stuff go, just let stuff go. Like you said with the driving, if people could let stuff go more, it would, you wouldn't see people, pulling people out of cars at stoplights or whatever and beating them because they got cut off or whatever,
Yep.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What was that? I don't know. Pretty good show? Are you all set, Brian?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Awesome. Well, folks, you know what to do. If you want to reach out and continue that conversation with us, you can reach us at the Crazy Life at outlook.com is our email address.
Crazy Life Podcast.
Crazy Life Podcast at outlook.com.
Yeah.
I knew I was missing something. I couldn't remember what it was.
Yep.
All right. The Crazy Life Podcast at outlook.com. The Crazy Life Podcast at Weebly.com is our email, or is our website. I can talk tonight. And you can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with the G, or Ditz with the Tits. You can reach me either one of those locations on Twitter. And, Brian, how can they reach you?
You can also be reached at, or your other podcast can be checked out at shakethesheets.com. Yep. You can find the show also on Twitter at the Crazy Life Pod, where I post when new episodes go up. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find my other podcast, at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. That show is not safe for work. Heno can be found on Twitter at Ida Heno. His other podcast, where they talk about, the TV show Gotham, or they've talked about, the Orville, and they've done some other, various topics, but, that can be found at Gotham Lights. You can check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Crazy Life Podcast. I feel like I skipped something. No? Okay. Oh, there it is. We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check out other podcasts on there and see if you find anything you may like. We would greatly appreciate it if you would share our posts on Twitter or Facebook, or share our podcast with people that you think could get something from it. And also, if you have the time, we'd appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe if you have not already. So, and to those who have, thank you. And then I guess, as usual here, this is where I tell everybody to reach out to people, talk to your friends, talk to people you haven't talked to in a while. Reach out to your friends that tell you they're fine all the time. Make sure they actually are. Something I don't say in here, we kind of said it once before, but something I want to say off and on here is don't take social media as a sign of how your friends are doing.
Yeah.
Don't just assume because they're posting this or this on social media that they're okay, because they may be, putting up a smoke screen. So check in with people, and, along the lines also, try to do something nice for somebody else, or just be kinder to people, and yourself.
Exactly. I can't echo that enough. I had a few people reach out to me this week about depression and just some really rough stuff they've been going through. And it breaks my heart to hear that people are hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want people to hurt. But I also recognize the fact that I'm limited to what I can do.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can be a listening ear, I can be a friend, and I can offer what little advice I have to give.
Yeah.
And that has to be enough for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind, folks, when you're helping someone else, that give, but also understand that you are limited, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely recommend professional help.
Yeah.
In every circumstance. I gave out texting numbers. I gave out hotline numbers. There's so much help out there.
Mm-hmm.
Just encourage them. Just let them know that if you can't help them, that there are people out there who can.
Yeah, and exactly. And help doesn't even have to mean therapy. It can mean a support group, or like you said, those, hotline numbers or texting with something. There's, all sorts of that kind of stuff out there too, if a person doesn't want to go actually into therapy, So, like you said, tons of people out there willing to help, and that's what they do. They've put their lives to helping people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that, folks, have a great week. Wiggle those toes and enjoy your life.